All right, we're off and running on the Krueger Show. Hope everybody's having a great day. Thursday night, June the 13th, 8:48 on the West Coast, 11:48 Eastern. The great Dieter Kurtenbach from KMBR 680 and the San Jose Mercury News joins me as he has been known to do on these Thursday nights as we've been bringing the Thursday night heat for the last few weeks, and Dieter's back with us. Dieter, good to see you, man. How are you?
Always great to be here, Larry. Doing great, and listen, I'm still buzzing from a wonderful Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Finals. I think we're going to get double sweeps for ESPN, NBA Finals, Stanley Cup Final, but at least one of them's been entertaining, and it wasn't the basketball.
Yeah, the basketball's been a snooze, man. I mean, outside of Minnesota, Denver a couple rounds ago, the rest of these playoffs have been just terrible.
I mean, the NBA Finals looks like a first-round series with the lack of adjustments and the general don't want to be in the moment for both teams. And that's supposedly the championship round of this league. So it really makes you wish that a team like the Warriors were back in the mix again, a champion team that understood what it took to get over the hump in the critical moments of games. This is not high-level stuff at all. And the discourse has been equally toxic. So very excited for basketball to be over, and kind of sad hockey's coming up to an end here soon.
I love watching Connor McDavid, but it looks like he's gonna fall short. And I thought maybe Kyrie and Luka would have some magic, but you know what? They've got to get the game to like a 5-point game with 5 minutes left to have a chance to finish. And Boston just is too much for them.
Well, they had that last night, but Luka decided that he wanted to foul out with 4.5 minutes to go and then somehow blame his bench for that. Real class act. I mean, someone you really can root for, you know?
And he's not in great shape. And God, I mean, for a guy who can shoot with range, he sure can't shoot inside of 5 feet. I mean, I must have saw the guy miss 5 shots that were all little bunnies, all, use the glass. I mean, within 5 feet of the bucket, you would think that's an automatic. He missed a ton of those shots. And they just don't have enough. They just don't have enough. And Boston's a little bit too much and so on and so forth. But yeah, the basketball in the NHL coming to an end. Baseball season's rolling. Yep. We're about 5 weeks away from training camp in the NFL. Mm-hmm. This is kind of the dormant time, but we're going to talk some Niners anyway.
So much to talk about anyway.
Yeah, there's always a ton to get into. And one of the stories I want to get into right out of the chute is that Chris Sims loves Kyle Shanahan. They were teammates at Texas, but for whatever reason, doesn't have that warmth for Brock Purdy. He liked Mac Jones. He hasn't adjusted. And the latest is, Sims, I think, ranked Purdy 17th best quarterback in the NFL when he's a for sure top 10 quarterback, in my opinion. But Sims says the Niners would have won the Super Bowl with Jordan Love instead of Brock Purdy. And it's amazing how Jordan Love threw a couple picks, including a game-ending, clinching interception from Dre Greenlaw. And yet everybody's takeaway was that he was awesome and that Purdy was lacking. How many times do you see that? A quarterback leads his team from behind to a playoff victory, and the other guy throws a clinching interception at the end.
Right.
And yet Jordan Love is hailed as great, and Purdy's like a developmental guy who's bound to regress. I mean, what do you make of that?
Last year's playoffs, I thought were going to be the turning point because it was wildly evident to me throughout last year's regular season that people were just unwilling to part with the narrative that they had built in their head about Brock Purdy, which is he's the last pick of the draft. He looks like some guy. He couldn't possibly be good. It's all the system. And then you watch him play at an MVP level with unquestionably great players around him, but unquestionably MVP level quarterbacking. And people were just still holding, they were just scrapping and clawing. They didn't even have a basis anymore. They just refused to unseat themselves from their position. And I thought last year's playoffs, if the Niners did what they did, and maybe even if they took it one step further, was going to change that narrative. And he comes out and he has 2 brilliant second halves. The game's on his shoulders in both of the NFC games. And he goes out and he wins it. And yet now we're still doing this same thing again because he lost to Patrick Mahomes. People just need to give up on it. I'm not telling anybody that you have to say that Brock Purdy is a top 5 quarterback or whatever. But if you can't acknowledge that this guy is not just good, but pretty damn good, you're not watching the game. You're holding on to some scouting report that you refuse to give up. You're unwilling to admit that you were wrong. And guess what? Everyone was wrong except for Larry. But everyone was wrong about Brock Purdy. No one saw this coming. He went last in the draft for a reason. If they thought he was going to be good, he would have gone in the first round. If they thought this is what was going to happen, he would have been a first round pick. No one knows what they're doing. And yet it seems as if some people who have no stake in the game whatsoever are the most unwilling to admit, hey, we got that wrong. And by the way, when you get it wrong, it's so much fun because now you just get to bask in the glory that is, what a cool story. What a fun thing this is. This guy's really good, and you never know when it's going to stop, but it might go on forever. And it's really, I just don't understand why people are holding on to this notion that he's bad because they just keep looking like assholes day in and day out, Larry.
Well, they look like haters. You're looking like, somebody who's just trying to be, overtly negative for, I don't know, who knows what reason.
Right.
But at this point,
what
I
did
think
Brock do to you? Where did he touch you?
Yeah, I mean, the other one that kills me is that, he's probably not going to get any better. And it's like, well, wait a second. This is his first complete offseason healthy. I think the odds are he's going to get significantly better. He himself has stated that he feels like he's significantly better. I also think it's interesting that, and I mentioned this to you before we went live. We had Ethan Sherwood-Strauss on last night, and he brought up the point that the critics of Brock Purdy are far more aggressive in the off season than they are in the actual season.
Mm-hmm.
And we were laughing about it. And it's just because, you know what, you rip the tar out of Brock Purdy on a Thursday in October, you're 72 hours away from looking like a fool. And
right.
you might lose some subscribers and some followers and some traction with your audience if you're so dramatically wrong about a key take.
Oh, yeah.
So in the off season, when he's not playing on Sunday, it's like, oh yeah, this guy can't do this. He can't do that. And he's not really there to defend himself. But there's a lot more criticism in the off season than the regular season, because in the regular season, it's like, hey man, if I say this guy can make me look really bad by Sunday.
It's a great point. And it's really funny because the off season is nebulous and everyone just goes back to their ideas, these concepts that they've built in their minds of what these quarterbacks are. And again, no one wants to give. I hate being this kind of guy because I hear this from fans all the time about players who don't deserve this sort of defense. But they don't want to give Brock the credit that he's due for what he's done. And the point is really hammered home by the fact that no one does this shit in the regular season. As Ethan said, no one is willing to put their neck out there in the regular season and say, actually, this guy sucks. Because the stats and the play and everything, there is an immediate counterpoint to anyone saying he sucks when there's a game on Sunday or Tuesday or Monday. Well, the NFL is going crazy with it. But in the offseason, when everyone's just kind of thinking back on what quarterbacks are, and it's all just collective memory. And you go, oh, yeah, Mahomes is really good. Well, Mahomes is then the greatest of all. It goes to these extremes. And because Brock Purdy is somewhat inexplicable, or at the very least novel, it's always going to err on the side of the most extreme version of that, which is this guy sucks and the magic beans are about to wear off. And, if people want to keep doing it, I guess it's important for everyone else to just keep the receipts and make sure it gets brought up again in the regular season. That sounds exhausting to me because none of this stuff matters all that much. But if you find folks out there feel so inclined, I would recommend doing it, because at a certain point, listen, we're all going to get stuff wrong. The takes have to fly. They're not all going to be right. But to be this obtuse, and I think deliberately obtuse, is embarrassing to you. And if your credibility means anything, I'd cut it out. But I guess that's not something people care about anymore.
Well, it's the old, especially in social media, the emperor has no clothes argument is, people are running to it, sprinting to it. Everybody's going left, we'll go right. Everybody's saying yes, I'll say no. People seem to think Brock Purdy's the guy. I'll come out and say he's not the guy. And it's an industry. By the way, we're off and rolling. It's the Krug Show on a Thursday night. Dieter Kurtenbach in the house from CamBR as we're chopping it up. We're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out. They're in Emeryville and Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. And they do actually run out. So don't get there at 7:45 thinking you get your pick of the barbecue choices.
Even if you say Larry sent you, they can't do anything for you.
When they're out of brisket, they're out of brisket. But it's all amazing. The pulled pork, the barbecue chicken, the house-made sausages. It's amazing. The brisket, though, is incredibly amazing. And the brisket chili is like rare. So go there, have some brisket, get some brisket chili, say hi to Damon and Mary, tell them that Krug sent you. And also this stream is brought to you by Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles, 205 Cypress Avenue there in Pacific Grove along the Monterey Peninsula. Call my friend Anthony Catania. He's at 831-521-5264. The first Friday of every month down there at Sharp Corners. They do kind of like a sidewalk deal where, they serve food, they have food and drinks and people are walking around and, buying and selling collectibles and all the merchants are out on the sidewalk the first Friday of every month throughout the summer months. So May, June, July, August, September, I believe the 5 months that they do that down at Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles. All right. Today, the big story in the NFL, Trevor Lawrence signs a 5-year, $275 million contract with an average annual value of $55 million a year. This is a guy that Brock Purdy outplayed last year. He's a guy who beat Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars head-to-head in Jacksonville in a very one-sided game. Mm-hmm. And the number just keeps going up, 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 up. The AAV is headed towards 60.
Yep.
And what do you think? I mean, Trevor Lawrence is now the highest paid quarterback in the NFL, and they say Prescott's going to probably get 60, 65.
Mm-hmm.
Are the Niners going to pay Brock Purdy $60 million a year? Are they going to be forced to, or do you think he will come to them and say, you know what? I want to be paid well, but I don't need I don't need my deal to be record breaking. Where do you think AAV wise Purdy's deal is going to sit?
I think it will sit right about where Lawrence and Joe Burrow are currently, even though it will be a little bit further down the line. I don't think it will match the Dak one because I think that there is some benefit. At what point are you just too rich? At what point is it not worth it? I mean, there's got to be a point of diminishing returns on that kind of money. You would know, Larry. I mean, you got to tell me, but it's a problem. It's a real problem for the 49ers. And it does make me wonder because to answer your question succinctly, they will pay him and they will pay him market rate. Now, whether that's 50, 55, 60. I mean, we were talking 40, 45, 50 a couple of weeks ago, and here we are just sliding it a little bit further to the north. The higher it gets, the more inclined I am to think it's just not worth it. And I know that is big and bold, and it's something the 49ers would never do. But I am somebody who has long subscribed to the notion and talked to people around the league about this. And I never get the full kickback that I would really expect from something this sort of radical. But I'm starting to wonder if the way to do it isn't to just constantly be drafting quarterbacks in late rounds and just hoping that one of them works. I know it's going to, it's a high risk scenario, but by the time they have to pay Brock this time next year, the 49ers situation could look fairly different. They could feel as if their Super Bowl window is closed. That would be a dramatic turn from what we expect this season, but I don't think it's out of the question. And if that's the case, then you really have to evaluate how you want to build your team for this next wave. And I know that currently Shanahan and Lynch are hell-bent on this team is being built around Brock. It's already being built around Brock. And Brandon Aiyuk will get paid what he gets paid because they're building around Brock. But this time next year, I do wonder if they'll have that same gung-ho energy about it. And that's even if Brock plays well because the money is so high and because they were successful doing it the other way, which is let's just go get a quarterback that we like some of these traits. We think that we can make him work in our system. We can get and this is going to be derogatory to Brock in a way, but we can get that B plus quarterback. In Brock's case, it went a little bit higher, but we can get quality enough play on the super, super cheap, put all of these great players around him. And now we have the depth and just an absurd amount of depth as the Niners have had in these past few years. And we're not totally reliant on one dude because our system is such a system that you can get away with it. Much in the same way that Chris Forrester was saying on the offensive line, like, I just need you to be at this level. And if you're at this level, we can teach you sort of the cliff notes and I can make you look good. If you're below the level, I can't do anything with you. If you're way above it, you're Trent Williams. And like, there's not that many of those guys. And I wonder if the 49ers at any point even consider over this next year that how many great, truly elite quarterbacks are there? Because I can tell you this, there are certainly more guys paid like it than there are actually in that club. And maybe they firmly believe Brock Purdy's part of that club, but I do think that with the money getting the way that it is, we're talking 25% of the salary cap moving forward, a full quarter. I got to wonder if they have a more serious conversation about, is Brock truly at that level, or could we reasonably replace Brock again on a 1/60th of what we would pay him and get all of the benefits of having a great team around a quarterback who wouldn't drop off very far from Purdy? I think it's a conversation that needs to happen. I trust that the 49ers will be thorough enough to have the conversation. Ultimately, I still think they're just going to give him whatever the market says they need to give him, that Brock will come down a little bit as to make himself look like he's for the team. Though I will say he's been taking a pretty significant pay cut compared to his market value the last few years. He might want that bag. And I don't know where it goes from there. It's a scary proposition paying one player that much of your salary cap in a hard cap league, which is just as much about accounting as it is about hitting dudes in the head. So,
well, I mean, I there are people that believe that you should draft a quarterback every year. I mean, when you look at the value of what, hitting on Brock Purdy has meant to the 49ers.
Yeah.
I think you could make a really strong argument that that's a good philosophy. I'm the one the last couple of days who's been saying, based on what I've seen, and granted it's minicamp, but based on what I've seen, I think Tanner Mordecai looks as good as Josh Dobbs and Brandon Allen. I wouldn't be surprised if he beats them out.
Yeah.
I also really feel that the Bears, to kind of, obviously they've got Caleb, who's the franchise. Some people think Caleb's going to be a superstar. I'm not one of them. I think Caleb's kind of overrated. But I really like Austin Reed, the Western Kentucky kid. I really like Tyson Bagent.
Yeah, Bagent
from
pretty
Shepherd
good for them last year.
Both those guys look pretty good to me. So we'll see. I mean, it's here's the one question, and I know what the notion is among the uninformed. But I'm asking you because I consider you to be more in the group of the informed since you're there at practice.
About that, Larry. We'll find out.
But what do you think's more true? Do you think that Brock Purdy is made by the Niner weapons, or do you think Brock Purdy makes the Niner weapons?
Oh, feels so
because
very
it's
binary.
Clearly argued that he is like a product of Shanahan and the weapons that he has at his disposal. But the more you watch him play with accuracy and on time, the more you watch him, as Invader 49er says, Purdy's kind of processing only comes around once every 10 years. I completely agree with Invader 49er.
That's his superpower.
He is a processing monster. He processes what he sees at the line of scrimmage, pre-snap, post-snap very fast.
He's the offensive coordinator.
He's accurate. And he plays on time, and
underrated scrambling ability.
Yeah. So, and he can move. So, I mean,
great deep ball.
Does he? I know the notion of the nation. If you ask more people, they would say, "Oh yeah, well Purdy, Purdy is a product of having Debo and Aiyuk and Kittle and CMC and anybody." I mean, I've heard a lot of Niner content creators say, "How many guys are there out there that you could plug in for Purdy and they would give you exactly what Purdy gives you?" And I just think that number, he makes it look so easy that I think he's fooled a lot of people into thinking that it is easy.
Right.
And that if you just subbed him out and subbed in Dak Prescott or any number of guys, that it would
people were
just be
saying it was
exactly the
Sam
same.
Darnold last year, Larry, as if
Right.
Sam, like, what are we talking about? Let me be very clear about this. This is a point that I've made a million times before, and I'll make it a million times since. If it was so fucking easy, then how come Brian Hoyer and CJ Beathard and Nick Mullins, who did have some success but didn't win any flipping football games and ultimately looked in over his head, why didn't any of the other even Jimmy Garoppolo to an extent?
Why were all these guys
Trey
not,
Lance,
outside of Jimmy? Why were those other guys 9-29?
Yeah. Why did everyone else suck, but this guy's good? Because maybe I'm holding it against Brian Hoyer here because that team did suck. But, like, there were some damn good players. 2018, when Jimmy gets injured, that was the team that was supposed to make the jump. 2020, like, there were some good football teams around backup quarterbacks. There was a damn good football team around Trey Lance. And maybe Trey didn't get the full shake that he deserved, and ultimately injury took him out and the Niners moved on. But, like, how come it looks so damn hard for everybody else? And as you noted, it looks so damn easy for Brock Purdy. Here's ultimately where I stand on it. I think that Brock Purdy is a quality starter on any team in the NFL. I don't know if I want to say top half or whatever, but there's not a team in the NFL that Brock Purdy wouldn't start for if you just did a Madden fantasy draft today. He's a starting quarterback in the NFL. I don't even know how anyone could argue against that.
Well, you're not saying that he would start over Mahomes or anything.
No.
You just mean that.
And I think that there's probably 4 or 5 guys that he would unquestionably not start over. But, like, if you have 32 starting jobs, Brock Purdy's got to be off the board there at like 10, 11, 12. I think if anyone knows football. And maybe, you're adding in the kids and the Anthony Richardsons and the projectability and all that. But, like, there's not a lot of guys in this league. Half of the quarterbacks in this league are not starting caliber quarterbacks. I mean, Derek Carr has been paid a lot of money to be really shitty for a long time. And I've watched Derek Carr up close since he was with the Raiders. I watched a lot of practices with Derek Carr, and I watched way too many of those games back in the day. Let me tell you, I know good quarterbacking. I know bad quarterbacking. Brock Purdy's a damn good quarterback. Now, does he get a little bit extra, or maybe even a lot extra, from being Kyle Shanahan's quarterback and from having the weapons around him? Absolutely. But I'm going to make a hockey analogy. Why are teams constantly apologizing or feel the need to apologize for having a good goalie? He's part of their team. Joe Montana never had to apologize because he had Jerry Rice. Michael Jordan didn't have to apologize because Scottie Pippen was on his team, or Dennis Rodman. I don't know what, I guess LeBron James did have to apologize because he had good players around him, but, like, Steph Curry had to apologize. That's basketball. There's a toxicity there we won't get into. Regardless, I don't understand. Tom Brady had Randy Moss and Rob Gronkowski and
Deion Branch won an MVP in the Super Bowl. And so did Julian Edelman.
Right. Like, they great players will have great players around them if you have a great team. Now, I guess everyone wants Brock Purdy to be a martyr, where he is just perceived to be this great player who never does anything of interest or note and is just this hypothetical man like Justin Herbert, where, well, if this happened and that happened, then he would be good because the talent just oozes off of the highlight film. But guess what? The highlight film doesn't mean squat. I did high school football recruiting in South Florida for a long time. Let me tell you, you can learn something from a highlight film. There's no question about that. What you actually learn is watching a whole damn game, because it's highlights and only highlights. And I need to see your lowlights too. I need to see where the floor is, because not everybody can do the highlight stuff. But if you don't have the kind of motor, I mean, I bet you could put together a great Randy Gregory or Chase Young highlight film from last year. I don't think that was the definition of their season, though. I'm sure you can find some cool plays where you go, this guy kicks ass. Watch a game with them. I'll tell you pretty unequivocally, they do not kick ass. They really burn the 49ers. And that is the difference between a quarterback who you can win the Super Bowl with and a quarterback like, we'll see. Maybe Herbert gets there. I mean, he's still young. He's got all the talent in the world. But a lot of guys who never get over that hump, a lot of guys who are, in theory, great players because they have all this talent, but are never actually great players. A Trevor Lawrence comes to mind. And I'll tell you this, Brock Purdy's floor on a week in, week out basis is damn high, and his ceiling is damn high. And as much as I just said, maybe the 49ers need to think about it a little bit when they're talking about 50, 55, $60 million. I'm just saying have a conversation. I'm not saying, hell no, get the hell out of here. He's never worth it. Great players have great players around them. And by the way, great players, as you noted, make great players look great. And there's a simpatico relationship. Is Brandon Aiyuk getting paid what he's about to get paid by the 49ers or some other team if Trey Lance is his quarterback? Hell no. Hell no. But because him and Brock Purdy have a great relationship on the field and understand each other implicitly on the field, Brandon Aiyuk's about to get paid big-time money because he put up big-time stats last year. And Brock Purdy's going to get paid big-time money because he has a big-time receiver on the outside as well as a big-time running back, as well as big-time. But, if we want to go on Brock and say, oh, it's the system, look at the other guys in the system. And yeah, oh, by the way, all I hear from 49ers fans, and I think they're right about this, is how shitty his offensive line is. So it's got to also be a Colton McKivitz part of the system and a Jake Brendel part of the system. And I get it. They have a great team, but not everyone on that team is great. And I would like to note that Brock Purdy seemed to take this team to another level when he went in over a guy, number 10, who took this team to a Super Bowl once, probably against his will, but he did it and put him to a couple NFC championship games. And when Brock Purdy, guy that we never heard about, guy that we had no idea, comes in, it just looked different. It felt different. And this team did go to a new level, even though they haven't gotten that 6th Lombardi trophy.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing to me that people don't show Purdy more respect because it was instantaneous. He walked in week 13 as a rookie, and he was instantaneously better than Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah.
Immediately.
That wasn't a high bar for me, but like Larry, I wrote the column after that week 13 game, and I'm like, there is not just a little bit here. There's a whole lot here. If it's so obvious that my monkey brain can see it, it's obvious. Trust me.
Instantaneously was better than Garoppolo. Ran the table as a rookie, then won 2 playoff games and was, put up some historic numbers in that Seattle game.
Spectacular fashion.
Yeah. And then, has the elbow ripped out, doesn't have an off season, comes back. Everybody claimed, he's not going to be back. He'll be on the PUP. He'll be out for the first 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Came back right away, led them to the Super Bowl, played pretty well in the Super Bowl. I don't know if he played great, but he played pretty well.
I don't
definitely
think
didn't lose the game.
Yeah.
He definitely didn't. But now it's interesting. It's like, you would think that at this point he would have won everybody over.
Yeah.
If CBS Sports had, and then they just had a ranking the other day where they had Mahomes 1 and Purdy 2, but somebody else at CBS Sports says they expect Purdy to regress in 2024. And I absolutely don't see it that way. I see it the other way. I see a guy who looks bigger, stronger, more involved in the offseason program.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're already starting to see a little bit of chemistry between Purdy and some of the receivers he's spent time throwing to this offseason.
That's right.
Like Cowing and Pearsall.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's any doubt that Brock Purdy, who he claims that he's gotten better this offseason, I think he's absolutely right. I think he's going to show that in the regular season. I think there's another level for him to get to. He was among the MVP candidates.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was legitimate. I think he's going to remain there and probably jump up. I would expect him to continue to get better. I think for the 3rd year in a row, we're going to see him surprise us by the level he can get to. And I think he's still ascending. Yeah. Where are you on Purdy this year? Do you agree with CBS Sports that there's going to be a backslide here, or do you see him as I see him, that he's still an ascending player?
I think you're probably closer to the truth, but I think that the point that I keep coming back to is even if he's the same, that's awesome. Because again, this team did go to the Super Bowl, and not only did it go to the Super Bowl, I mean, he pulled them there. His second halves in those games were unbelievable. And you would think the national narrative, and I know it's this nebulous thing. I hate when people say the internet reacted as if it's like just a cabal of 50 people. The narrative as if, we're all getting together and establishing the narrative of the day. But there is some sort of collective opinion. And you would think that at this point it would have swung dramatically the other way, that people would be overrating Brock Purdy dramatically.
Right.
So the fact that you can come out and be like, I still think he's got another level to get to, and that would be perceived as a hot take, like, it's lunacy to me, because that should be the take that everyone has as an overcorrection to their terrible takes before. And maybe I'm getting too meta and media analysis-y, and you already had Ethan on. That's his ball game, not mine. But
right.
I would bet certainly that Brock takes it to another level up before he drops another level down, because he had the full offseason, because he does look better and different. And by the way, because not only has he developed some chemistry with these younger receivers, but I think he has more offensive weapons around him going into this season. Do I have my questions about the offensive line? Absolutely. Do I have my questions about the tight end depth? You bet your ass I do. Am I worried about that defense? Absolutely. But, that also might force Brock to let it rip a little bit more, and we could be seeing even larger numbers because of the circumstance of this team. And when you think about adding Pearsall, adding Cowing to the mix, when you think about the stable of 5 running backs they got, because I like that guy out of Green Bay that they got 32.
Patrick Taylor.
I think he's just fine. He looked pretty good to me. Now
you watch some of the really tape. He did look good, and he's a big athletic running back.
Yeah. Like he looks like an NFL guy to me. They're probably just going to cut him. Not even think about it. Like, they got 5 running backs on that team that I would feel very comfortable giving 20 carries a game to. And that's probably putting JP Mason at the bottom of the list. And we all know JP Mason's got something for us. So I think there's a lot more offensive talent around him. I think Kyle is going to be a bit more experimental in his play calling this year, because he kind of has to, with some of the personnel deficiencies they have, again, at tight end and on the offensive line. And because the trust is there with Brock. And that's the thing. Kyle's not a trusting coach. He's not a trusting person. And he trusts Brock implicitly at this point, which is kind of crazy just to think about. But that's where Kyle is. He trusts him to be his offensive coordinator. This is Kyle's Kirk Cousins. It was the Kirk that was promised. And I do think that year 3, with a guy with brain this big, the sky is the limit, because we've seen what Kyle can do with guys when they are deep into his system. There's a trust, there is a comprehensive understanding, and you put some damn good weapons around them. This offense, which was already the best in the NFL last year, can absolutely go to another level. And I don't think that Brock's numbers wouldn't reflect that in 2024-25.
Yeah, I think he's getting better. I think he's going to get better. I think he's going to show it this year. Jay Mill in the chat says, Larry, I'll be out in Cali in August heading to Tahoe. Oh, Tahoe in August is hard to beat, man. That's going to be incredible. May have to try pig in a pickle while I'm out there, as we want to drive over to the coast at some point. Yeah, check them out. Check them out. They're in Marin. They're in Emeryville. Great barbecue. You will not be disappointed. They're open 7 days
on
a week.
80 the whole time.
Yeah, and Tahoe in August is just my absolute favorite spot. I mean, seriously, if I could spend 1 month a year in a spot, I think I would take August and make it be in Tahoe. To me, there's just nothing better than you get up in Tahoe, you get that morning cool air.
Yep.
You go for a little walk down to the casino, you bet on a couple baseball games you have interest in, right?
Yeah.
And then you go to the beach. Right? You go to the beach, and you sit there, and if it's August, the water is just starting to be warm enough to get in. You get an inner tube, and you start floating around out there in the lake for a few hours, get a little sun, have a little lunch, maybe go back to the cabin, start barbecuing, have a bottle of wine, watch a couple of those baseball games you wagered on, and hang out, listen for the bears and the coyotes and all the wildlife. Yeah. But I mean, that to me, Tahoe, because Tahoe, it's about 80 in August. Mm-hmm. And then at night it's about whatever, 60 or
Yeah,
58.
I mean, it's great.
Just
It's
perfect.
shorts and a sweatshirt, Larry, which is the ideal temperature to live.
And you just sit out there on the deck and
cigar and the fire pit,
fire
cold beer,
pit, maybe a cold beer, a couple Pliny's,
now
having some barbecue tri-tip or something. It's
Larry.
And
what are we? We're going to be at training camp. We're going to be in Santa Clara, California, instead.
Seriously, training camp. Well, I do love training camp too, but not as
we love training camp, but we really do need to evaluate our life choices here, Larry.
Seriously, Tahoe is where it's at. All right, couple other topics that I want to hit here. One is our friend Rohan. I don't know if you know Rohan Chakravarthy from Niners Nation. He's got a pretty interesting article out at Niners Nation right now. Most important newcomers for the 49ers this season.
He got number one?
Well, he's got Leonard Floyd.
Interesting.
And that's a good one. I mean, that's a good one. I would say that's a good one. Because Leonard Floyd is, I think, going to make a big impact.
Yeah.
He's got the three most important newcomers, and he's got Leonard Floyd. He's got Jordan Elliott. Now, this, I know you and him don't see eye to eye because you're not a big Jordan Elliott guy.
We'll find out.
He likes Jordan Elliott, and he likes Renardo Green.
Love Renardo Green.
And those are interesting options there for sure.
Yeah.
My three would be, I also would go with Leonard Floyd.
Okay.
I think I would go with Malik Mustafa.
Yeah.
I think I would go with Ricky Pearsall.
Okay.
But then I'm going to go just because I'm going to add a fourth because that's me. I order off the menu.
You're allowed.
And Jordan Elliott, was the Missouri guy on his list. So I have to have a Missouri guy on my list. I'm taking Cody Schrader. Wow. I think Cody Schrader is real. I love what I've seen so far. I think he's going to be fantastic in the preseason. So I'm going to go Leonard Floyd, Malik Mustafa, Ricky Pearsall, and a write-in vote for Cody Schrader. If I say to you, best newcomers for the Niners this offseason, who do you got?
We're talking best, or are we talking most important?
Either way. I mean,
most important.
Best is a kind of a generic plaudit, so you can kind of, define it any way you want.
I think most important is the way I want to go. And I'm going to slide one in from Leonard Floyd. And I'm going to say Malik Collins, the defensive tackle, who, listen, you lose Eric Armstead. That is a big deal. Even if Eric Armstead didn't have his best season last year when he played, he was pretty much the only thing holding together that run defense. And when he was gone, it went from meh to like straight up bad. And they didn't replace him in that sense. They did not get a run stopper. And my big concerns on this team are linebacker, defensive tackle, tight end. Not great positions to have question marks going into the season with. And if they don't have a run stopper, it puts a lot more onus on Fred Warner. And it's not to say that Fred can't do everything and anything and isn't just unbelievably great at everything that he does, but he's only one man. And defense needs all 11 to be working in unison. And if Fred is just having to clean up everything like Ray Lewis in 2002, or go into that mode to make it happen, that's a real issue for the San Francisco 49ers, who ran into this problem with Detroit, even saw it a little bit with Green Bay. I mean, and certainly Kansas City was able to get yards when they needed to, even if it was Patrick Mahomes running like he was holding something between his butt cheeks for a first down. So I'm going DT. I'm not going Jordan Elliott. I get where Melaniak is going with Purdy, but there's two guys ahead of him on the depth chart going into training camp at right guard. And while no one feels great about John Feliciano, and certainly Spencer Burford has not won over many fans for viable reasons. I mean, he had kind of a critical mistake in the Super Bowl. That's two guys he has to jump. And I know that he'll be in the mix and he'll get a fair shot at it. But I do think that the 49ers will err on the side of caution instead of putting in a rookie immediately, probably going with the guys that they know and hoping that Burford, with a little bit more fire under his ass, can take that next step forward. I think Pearsall's got to be on the list. I think Pearsall's going to get a tremendous amount of targets this season. And I'll go with the Nuge because
that's what Kawa.
Oh, Peach Tio. Man, I'm getting slayed on the pronunciations today.
Kawachipto says
Kawachipto.
Nugent is more important than Puni, to be honest. LOL.
Well, let's just talk the Nuge. I mean, he's the backup center, and Jake Brendel.
He looks good. He looked good in practice. I mean, whatever. It's practice.
We'll find out.
He does look good in practice. He's fiery.
Yeah.
He lifts guys off their cleats. He gets low. He plays with leverage. He keeps the legs churning. We know he's smart. You know, he's supposed to be athletic, but overwhelmed by size sometimes. But he looks pretty freaking strong, to be honest. I love what I've seen so far out of Nugent, Puni, and Kingston.
Kingston has been, I mean, you saw it on the tape, and I noted when he got drafted, I'm fascinated to see what happens when he finally gets coaching. And what, that comes off as very flippant and mean towards USC, but I highly recommend, if anyone gets the chance, to watch what USC did on offense last year and explain to me how that is even close to the sport of football. The splits that they were operating on the offensive line in the Pac-12, it was a joke. It was a joke. And Kingston was the only guy that offensive line sucked. Kingston was the only guy who gave good reps. And it got blurred out by the fact that he had just garbage around him and really bad coaching and just illogical things happening. But when you really honed in on what he did at tackle for USC, you see a lot of the traits that the 49ers really value, which is that short side-to-side speed, violent hands, and when he gets you, he gets you. And again, that footwork and that ability to just get from point A to point B, side to side, really fast is impressive stuff. And it showed on the practice field. Again, they're not wearing pads, so you don't want to read too far into it. But you and I have both seen enough football practices without pads. You can tell when someone doesn't have it. And none of these guys that we've talked about have been disqualified. There's one more name. Oh, Isaac Garendo.
Yeah, what do you think of Garendo?
I think that he is perfect.
There's a video. I'm sorry to interrupt you. There's a video I just watched right before our live stream.
Yeah.
And it's another guy who sees Garendo as I see Garendo, as like a really, really exciting potential upgrade replacement for Kyle Juszczyk.
Yeah.
This guy sees him as a fullback as well. I really see him as a fullback. Now, he's got a fullback number. He's got fullback size.
Yeah.
He can catch it. He can block.
Mm-hmm.
Those are traits that the Niners ask their fullback to be able to do. Eventually, Juice is going to be done. Probably not this year, maybe next year. But
right.
I think Garendo is going to be a very interesting guy to watch, because to me, he doesn't look like a running back, and he doesn't look as good as Cody Schrader.
No.
And I don't think he's going to be as good as Cody Schrader in the preseason.
No.
But he's definitely big, strong, fast, athletic, valuable athlete. Mm-hmm. So either they're going to IR him for a year and redshirt him and then give him Juice's job next year, or maybe he has some incredible preseason and he beats out Schrader and gets a roster spot at running back. But to me, he's wearing 49 and he looks like a fullback.
I think that they should give him number 31, because when I watch him, I see the second coming of Raheem Mostert.
Yeah, a lot of people do.
It's just the straight line speed. And honestly, Raheem Mostert isn't half the pass catcher this kid is. And you look at the
nor as big. I mean, this kid's big and physical.
But Raheem Mostert didn't look like a running back either. He had that big upper body. He looked like a sprinter, right? And you go, man, this guy could die at any second. But he was kind of tall, and everything was straight line. He's got no hips on him, and it was just go. It's the same sort of running style. Not as upright, but it is just go. And yeah, God love him, Kyle Shanahan's still got a little bit of that in his playbook. I know that they're mixing and matching with McCaffrey, and here, Cody Schrader's the second coming of Alfred Morris with way more athleticism and all this stuff. But it's a Coke Zero. Sorry to disappoint.
Which is truly awful, by the way. I
Larry,
tried it the other day because
we agree on a lot of things. I will disagree with you to the gates of hell on this one.
Coke Zero
is incredible.
It's so bad. I took 2 sips of it and I poured it out. 2 sips, and I was just like, well, I'm tipping one out for my homies. I mean, I had to pour the whole thing
My
out.
mouth that just showed up underneath to catch it. That's what happened there. I was the
Really?
homie.
Do you really like it, or is it just you like less calories?
No, I really like it.
Do you like it more than Coke Classic?
Yeah, I haven't. I mean, I haven't had a Coke Classic in
So that just tastes super sweet to you.
a decade. Yeah, I mean, it'd be brutal. I mean, I'm down like, not to toot my own horn here, but like I got back up to let's call it playing weight there for a while, and so I've had to go pretty hard on cutting for a minute or two. And
You got the O lineman build. You got the O lineman build. You're,
Larry, as you know, there's two kind of O linemen.
You're
right?
a tackle. You get 36.5-inch arm length. You can
more than that. Yeah. I mean, I got offered D1 scholarships just walking through the hallway in high school. They're like, how would you like to play for Northern Illinois? And it's like, I'm not very good, right? Like, I'm pretty shitty.
Well, I like it when they deliver food to the media room. I can use you as kind of a shield,
right,
and then I just figure, you know what? I'll just work right behind Dieter. I'll play off Dieter's back. Nobody will see me, and I'll sneak in here. I'll get my my Chick-fil-A spicy chicken sandwich and some fries, and I'll be in and out without anybody really seeing me.
Well, so regardless, I've been no carbs for a minute or two, and so having Coke Zero is a godsend.
No carbs.
No carbs.
So so do you go in and out? You just say you get lettuce wrap or what?
You could do the lettuce wrap. Actually, the lettuce wrap, if we want to be terribly specific, has about 8 carbs in it with the spread. So what you want to do is you want to get the Flying Dutchman, which is just cheese and burger.
No lettuce.
No lettuce.
What do you eat it with? I mean, how do you hold it?
You pick it up with your hands, and you get a little greasy.
Wow.
The Flying Dutchman. It's off menu.
Wow.
I'm like you. I order off menu as well.
There you go. That was my dad's thing. He oftentimes would order off the menu. That's when you're rolling, when you're ordering off the menu, and when the people are still at the restaurant love you. And they still love you. My dad used to tip like a madman, but he'd order off the menu.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah, we would like. How about a little, at our favorite Cantonese restaurant?
Yeah.
How about a little chicken with Chinese greens? I know you don't have it on the menu, but could you whip it together first?
Put 2 and 2 together for me.
The bok choy, we can throw the bok choy in there for you, Mr. Krueger.
Here's how bad I am about Coke Zero. I have a Soda Stream, and I literally have a syrup bag for Coke Zero, like they use in restaurants on the machine.
Right.
I mix my own Coke Zero for a Soda Stream. I mean, I'll be dead by 60, but until then.
Millenniacs is Dieter, throw a little mayo in that Coke Zero, and you could play quarterback for the Tennessee Titans tomorrow. I'm not getting that.
Will Levis put mayo and I think his coffee.
Totally awful.
Totally sicko behavior. I mean, I'll throw. There
was a guy who lived to like 99 years of age, when we were kids, who ate every day a teaspoon of Vaseline. He ate a teaspoon of Vaseline every day, and he lived to 99.
It just coats you up,
That just sounds like the worst thing of all time. I think I would just yak.
Dude, there's some
How do you
crazy
even get that
TV
down?
shows. Larry, you should watch the people who eat like fiberglass insulation and like raw meat. There was a whole like subgenre of reality TV for a solid 10 years between like 2005 and 2015, where it was just like people's weird habits. And I'm gonna be honest, Larry, it was riveting shit.
MF drops a giant question. Larry, will Farhan acquire Luis Robert for Carson Wisenhunt? I hope so. Though I do love Carson Wisenhunt. I don't want to see him traded.
A little bit more than that.
Yeah, I would do it though.
I don't think that is prospects.
Well, I mean, I would offer Marco Luciano and Rainer Arias and just some of their younger guys. Maybe Reggie Crawford, who's throwing 100 from the left side, might be up this year. And I'd try to get Andrew Vaughn and Luis Robert. If the Giants got Luis Robert and Andrew Vaughn, I think they could probably get that third playoff spot. If they get the third playoff spot, even though I think it's, you might get it without even being 500 right now. Right now, I believe the third playoff team in the National League sub 500.
Yeah. Well,
So
there's a lot of mediocrity and crappiness. At some point, someone will make a run, and you'll have to be a couple of games over. But like, where would
right.
Andrew Vaughn even play? Because Lamont Wade's coming back. They still feel Wilmer Flores has a role on this team. That's the platoon at first. I mean, where would you even stick Vaughn? He can't play anywhere but first. He's not even good at first.
Yeah, I would play him at first against lefties, and I would DH Lamont Wade and play him more in the outfield corners.
Okay.
I mean, look at it this way. You lost Jung-Hoo Lee. Solaire's been really ice cold.
It's been bad.
I don't like Yaz. I don't like Slater. Ramos is a rookie.
You mean Austin Slater, who is in fuego right now, Larry?
Yeah, can't stand him.
Can't
stand him. Can't stand everything about him, really. I mean, I hate the mustache. I hate everything about the kid.
Yeah, I love those 3 for 5 games, though.
Yeah, with a bunt single.
Hey, got on base.
But
doesn't
Slater
ask how.
and
He
Yaz,
only asks if.
If you could get Luis Robert and Vaughn, and you had like Vaughn at first base against lefties, Lamont at first base against righties.
Yeah.
Maybe play Lamont in the corners a little bit more. So you have a little bit more representative outfield when you are resting a guy, since in baseball, it seems like it's a big deal. I think that might be enough. I mean, I kind of like the Giants pitching if they get Cobb and Robbie Ray middle of the year, put Wynn and Hicks in the bullpen. Now you got a deep pen, you got a deep rotation.
Yeah.
The defense is kind of what it is, but to me, if you get a couple of real bats and get them rolling, Giants easily could be that third wild card.
I'm with you. I mean, my concern would be that Luis Robert is going to cost a haul because he has several years of team control left. And so this is going to have to be.
I think it's 2, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's more than, that's not a rental. That's right. Something.
No, you're going to have to pay. I mean, you're going to have to pay for Luis Robert is the top outfielder available in the trade market. And if you look at the baseball trade landscape, the reality is last year you had a 5 seed and a 6 seed play in the World Series. The Rangers won it all. Because of that, everybody's going to play that game of let's just try to get in and anything can happen.
That's right.
Then you also have a situation where because of the extra wild card, there's really only right now about 5 or 6 sellers. Right. Colorado and Miami in the National League, White Sox, A's, a couple teams in the American League besides them, Angels.
Yeah.
There aren't that many sellers out there. No. So it's going to be a seller's market. There's going to be more buyers than there are sellers.
Right.
But that's why I think if I'm the Giants, I go to the White Sox offering a bevy of prospects. And then the other thing that's going to be interesting is that in that San Diego, Minnesota, or in that San Diego Marlins trade for Luis Arias, Arias, the Padres gave premier prospects so that the Marlins would pay the contract.
That's right.
Because that's how poor San Diego is. The Giants are literally the opposite. The Giants should want to retain as many of their prospects as possible, and the Giants have money to burn. Yeah. So to me, it seems like if I'm the Giants, I would go to the White Sox and say, I'll pay all the freight on anybody's contract remaining so I can not trade Bryce Eldridge or not trade Carson Wisenhunt or trade less in a prospect deal.
But they're going to have to give those guys up anyway because the White Sox are going to be able to go to 20 other teams and say, hey, you want this Luis Robert guy who, when he's on, is an MVP caliber player. Kicker is he's never really on because
he's been hurt a lot.
I mean, he's literally every at bat could be his last. It's just the way.
But he's also a great athlete. He looks a lot like Jorge Soler. He's just a gigantic right-handed thumper.
He's magnificent. You just don't get to see it all that often. I mean, it's a legitimately big risk because you're having to give what I would imagine to be a Juan Soto level offer. I mean, the Yankees gave up a ton for Soto. Now, the Yankees had prospects to burn. The Padres have prospects to burn. The Dodgers have prospects to burn. There's a lot of teams that could use a Luis Robert who could take the freight with the prospects, and maybe they have to toss in another guy or two to save some money.
But if you're far on and you don't make that move, odds are by the time you get to the playoffs, you're going to be fired.
But the flip side that he has to consider is I'm trading the future, what I believe is a very strong future, and we can agree or disagree. It doesn't really matter. We'll find out in the wash.
Yeah.
I can acquire this guy, and a week later, he's out for the season because that's his track record.
Yeah.
You can't trust him. In the same way that you go, I don't know about trading for Mike Trout, who I'm not even sure if the Angels want to move him because the Angels still do have some financial considerations of
$35 million a year.
Yeah, I mean, who the hell's going to want to go to an Angels game if Mike Trout's not there? And they got to, at some point pay the bills. But regardless, if Mike Trout were to hit the market, you'd have to wonder to yourself at this point, is he worth the haul that it would take to get him? Because as you noted, it's a seller's market. So whatever you think you can get him for, add a 20% surcharge in terms of prospect value. Because that's what
I think the Giants can't do. They can't. Like I read an article the other day, the Giants and one other team are the front runners for Juan Soto. And I just wanted to pull my hair out when I saw that. I was like, oh my God.
That's funny.
No more. Stop it, please. No more teasing the fan base with these phantom free agent pursuits that you're never going to win. You never win these battles.
Yeah.
To me, the Giants have a major PR problem even discussing trades or discussing free agents. I think they're better.
I don't think the fan base buys into it anymore. I
no,
think
not at all. But that's
eyes.
why I think if the Giants are really going to excite their fan base, it can't be 2 months from now we're going to sign this guy. A month from now we're going to sign this guy. We just offered him X and he's, we just signed him. No, that's not going to work. What's going to work better is if you trade prospects in July and all of a sudden, July 28th, he's not there. And July 29th, there's Luis Robert and Andrew Vaughn. And now you've won 7 in a row and you're rolling. Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see. Dan Coach Emilio, our good friend, says Matos or Luciano would have to be in the deal for Luis Robert plus a couple of others. Well, I'm willing to move Luciano for sure based on what I've seen. Mark Graves says, get the Petaluma kid, Spencer Torkelson. He just got sent out by
there's no reason for Detroit to move him. Like there's no reason for them to think, hey, I mean, he's got like a year of service time under his belt. So I just don't know why they would give up on him. They got to send him to Toledo to get his shit right. But like, I'm not sure why they would just jettison him. I mean, if you want to give up a better prospect than him, sure. Yeah. I'm sure they've soured on him enough, but now you're buying what is, let's be real, damaged goods. I mean, he got sent down for a reason. He sucked.
Yeah. I mean, there's no question. MF says, Larry, what about Trout? Once again, Kawakami's got a great article up about all the different reasons the Giants should go after Trout. But, he's hurt a ton and he's been hurt a ton and he's cost a lot. And, I think the Giants could probably do better than that. I'd rather see him go for Vladdy Jr. or, as I said, Luis Robert, Andrew Vaughn, Pete Alonso. I'd rather see him go in a different direction. Melaniak says, Larry, you got to get a custom Tanner Mordecai jersey when your kid makes the 53. I know I'm a big Tanner Mordecai guy.
Yeah. There's no way that will backfire.
Yeah. Dan Coach Amelia says, seriously, do you think cautious Farhan is going to pull off a big deal when there's 25 teams competing for a wild card spot? It's a seller's market. The Giants should consider selling to build for the future. Yeah, but they don't. Danny.
Who wants to buy what the Giants are selling?
Yeah, I don't know, but I can't see the Giants selling. MF says Hunter Bishop is better than Yaz, Larry, and Dieter. Well,
tell me one thing Hunter Bishop has done.
He's hitting 300 in the last couple of weeks down there. I mean, better than Yaz. I mean, what's Yaz? Yaz is a mascot at this point. I don't love.
Either
Yaz.
Way, Larry, if you watch it, Yaz and Slater are kicking ass this past week.
So what? So
it's the ups and downs, the mosaic, Larry.
Okay, but wait a second. They are kicking ass, so that is a great point.
I get that.
And that makes me want to play a game called Let's Check Their Stats and decide if their being hot has meant a damn thing. All right, now let's take a look at Austin Slater. He's
hot. Give me the last 7 for me, Larry.
He's hot. And so what is he? Last 7 days?
Yep.
He is 5 for his last 9.
That's hot.
In the regular season, though,
he just got healthy. You can't hold that old shit against him.
He's hitting 212 with no home runs and 4 RBIs.
Yeah.
Okay.
But he's 5 for his last 9. Let's be real about which one's the true indicator here, Larry. We all know that Austin Slater has been an MVP in waiting for a long time now.
Mike Yastrzemski Another
Red hot.
guy who is probably has naked pictures of Farhan, because otherwise, why does he have a gig, is hitting 216 with 7 home runs. Now, he has driven in 26,
That's
which
right.
is not a bad number, but 7 home runs and
7 home runs.
terrible average.
But Larry,
and
he
then
gets
somebody
on
said
base.
Luis Roberts hitting 196. So what?
Luis Robert hit a massive. So what?
So
he hit a
what?
massive yak tonight.
Somebody said keep the damn Eldridge kid. Gives me shades of hope. He hit 3 bombs in a Cal League game, I think 2 nights ago.
Yeah.
So there you go. Robbie says I hate baseball talk. Yeah, we're killing the audience with our baseball talk. I've noticed that. All right, a couple more things before we get out of here, and appreciate Dieter hanging out.
Nothing but rugby talk.
Give me the.
Who do you got in the Euros tomorrow, Larry?
Yeah. Let's talk Caitlin Clark now. Training camp battle that you're most looking forward to in this summer with the Niners, and then I got one last one for you on Brandon Aiyuk.
Cornerback. I love the cornerback situation because Renardo Green is going to be in there. Larry, you got to forgive me. It's been a long day. I was up at 5 o'clock in the morning. Who the hell is the guy from the Saints that they got? Isaac Yiadom. Thank you. Isaac Yiadom has been out there and has looked magnificent. You have 4 starting caliber cornerbacks on this team for 3 spots. And I know that, one of them is nickel with Diamador Lenore, but with Mooney Ward, Yiadom, and then I will take that, Mark Graves. Thank you. I probably look like him.
Yeah, it sound like fun.
Children of the night. But you're big on the kid from South Alabama, or sorry, who was the
South Alabama, Darrell Luter Jr.
Luter.
Yeah,
he
looks phenomenal.
Totally.
Big,
I like
strong,
Sammy
fast, dominating
energy. And by the way, like Ambry Thomas, we've all crapped on Ambry Thomas, but Ambry Thomas should probably be on an NFL roster as a depth guy. And the truth of the matter is they're going to have to cut one of them at the minimum going into the season because that's just too many quarterbacks. And I'm really interested to see how that all shakes out because there's a world in which Yiadom, again, who has looked fantastic, doesn't start because Renardo Green is that good. There's a world in which the writing's on the wall that Yiadom is only holding the job for as long as he doesn't screw up, which is a pretty terrible spot to be in as a corner. There is a chance that the 49ers go into the season with the best cornerback crew in the NFC this season. Forgive me, I'm messing up on Yiadom's name, so clearly I'm not up and up on the general cornerbacks across the league. But, I mean, a position of clear weakness in general under Kyle Shanahan is now arguably, with wide receiver also being in consideration, the deepest position this team has. And I'm really interested to see how that all shakes out because it also is very informative for 2025. I mean, we could, much like Deebo Samuel's got the writing on the wall for him this year because of the depth in the wide receiver room, writing could be on the wall for Mooney Ward as well. If these other guys come out here and just totally kick ass in training camp the way that they kicked ass in mini camp and have kicked ass in practices, previous years. So I'm really interested to see what happens there.
Yeah, for me, it's right guard. I want to see Pooney against Burford, against Feliciano, against, and the interior spots too. Brendel, against Drake Nugent, against Kingston, against Nick Sakel, against, all the different options they have at center, and they got a bunch of them. So to me, it's those interior spots, center and right guard. I'd like to see some turnover, to be completely honest.
Yeah.
I'd like to see some new faces there. I think, they were 30 or 28th in the NFL in the interior pass blocking last year. And you can't ignore that. You got to look at those numbers. I think you got to try to upgrade. I like the idea of Nugent at center and Pooney at right guard, or maybe Nugent at center and a combination of Pooney and Burford sharing right guard again. That that would not be bad, but I'd like to see a little bit more thump and a little bit more juice and a little bit more pop, a little bit more athleticism in the Niner offensive line. I feel like they're a little under explosive, and the more athletic defensive lines kind of work them.
How do you feel about Banks going into this season? Because we've kept our eye on right guard and talked about right guard so much. It feels as if Banks, who I didn't feel like made any real massive step forward. I feel like he's winning by default in a lot of senses at left guard in terms of, holding on to that job. How do you feel about Banks right now?
Well, I love Banks. I mean, I think Banks is a tremendous prospect. I also didn't mention Ben Barch. Invader 49er says Ben Barch, 315 pounds, he could win the center job. That's true. And he was running with the ones at center. I like it. I like Banks. This is the thing with Banks. If Banks can get through this year without having another recurrence of the concussions,
Right.
then I think he gets a long-term deal for decent money. But if he's an El Cerrito guy, he's a Bay Area kid, he's a leader, he's tough.
It sounds
he's
like
assignment
Farhan
sound.
logic. Oh, he's local. Let's give him a new deal.
But he walks around at 320 pounds, so he's not one of these guys that's going to have to, lift weights to get to 320. And then, those guys usually play longer when your natural walk around weight is your playing weight or really close to your playing weight. That's good.
Yeah.
So I like Banks a lot, but to me, I think if he suffers another, this is where the NFL's ruthless, but if he suffers another couple concussions and misses, 3, 4, 5 games with concussions, I think they hedge their bet and move down the road and let him walk at the end of the year. Now, if he can get through this year and really elevate and play his best year ever and not, miss a bunch of time with concussions, then I do think there's going to be money there to sign him. And I think they'd like to get him signed.
Yeah, no, I just, it's somebody who was talked about a lot a couple of years ago. And it might just be me not paying that much attention, kind of out of sight, out of mind. I feel like we've really honed in on Burford, and I get it because it's wildly evident when he messes up. But I never felt like there was that much of a disparity between the two of them. Banks just feels more professional. And yet here's Burford having to fight off 2 guys for a job, whereas Banks is just in there every day. And I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just noting it's interesting and maybe something I'll keep an eye on here in camp, because the Niners do have, well, maybe they don't have the top end guys. They don't have those star players that you want outside of 71. There is some depth there. There are some pieces that you can move around and it could make it interesting. And if you do, if the 49ers agree with you, if Chris Furser agrees with you and change is imminent, I think there's a couple of very fascinating combinations they could go with some of the guys that they have. And a lot of them are healthy for the first time, really, for them all at the same time. So we could have a pretty interesting training camp with that collective.
What I like most about Banks is that I watch him every week, and I rarely, if ever, see him truly anchored and bull rushed. He anchors against pretty well. He doesn't get moved when he sets his feet. You're not bull rushing him. Now you might speed rush him, but you're not going to bull rush him.
Yeah.
And I also think he's benefited a lot from playing next to Trent. Let's be honest. I mean, I think it's way tougher to play right guard next to Colton than it is to play left guard next to Trent Williams.
I mean, not just Colton. You're also getting, you also got Brendel in the middle there, and he's a guy who you just want to line up on in between their shoulders. Here we go. I mean, I like Brendel's smarts. I think that it's very valuable to have somebody like that because he handles all the coverages. Brock isn't dealing with that crap at the line of scrimmage, and I don't think that's a problem at all. And that's why the Nuge is so intriguing to us, because we know he's smart and we know he can handle stuff like that. Or at least we've heard from people who don't lie about stuff like that, that's the case. We'll find out soon enough. I do think that that's more valuable than people lend it. But you watch the tape and you're like, oh, this guy's average at best is the nice way of putting it. And it's a real problem when you have a guy with some pretty clear liabilities to your right, a guy with some pretty clear liabilities to your left. And by the way, you got a couple of clear liabilities. It makes things a little hairy in terms of locking down a spot. Whereas, bless him, Banks can look to his left and say, oh, that might be the best guy to ever do it. And he's still doing it at a very high level.
The other training camp battle I'm really eager to see is along the defensive line. Just from the standpoint of, I like the guys at the back end there. I like Evan Anderson, and I like what I saw of Shaquille Brown. Shaquille Brown is big.
I agree with you on Shaquille.
Powerful, explosive, and athletic. And Evan Anderson is definitely strong and has got his weight in check. They're sitting currently behind Kalia Davis and T.Y. McGill. Now, I think there's a very good chance that, it's Malik Collins, it's Javon Hargrave, it's Kevin Givens, it's Jordan Elliott. You're going to have one more defensive tackle probably in your on your group. And then it's like, to me, it's probably either Shaquille Brown or Evan Anderson over T.Y. McGill or Kalia Davis. But I think that battle is going to be really, really fun to watch because I like what I've seen from Brown and Anderson.
We can go down the line because I'm fascinated to find out who's going to be the backup free safety for this team.
Yeah. Who's the starter?
I mean, Jair Brown's going to start there. I feel like that's
start for sure.
At free. But I mean, I'd love
George
to see
Odom's running with the twos right now.
Yeah, and if they want to try George Odom in a true free safety cover 3 role, they can go ahead and try that. I think that a lot of other teams would be thrilled with that update.
He's a special teamer.
He's a linebacker.
Yeah, I mean he's a special team guy.
I'll tell you this:
he's
the
a great
49ers
special teamer.
They're loaded at strong safety. I mean, they go 3 deep at strong safety, Larry. And here I thought that position was being phased out, but here we are. It's going to be. I think off-ball linebacker is a really interesting battle going in. I know that you got a veteran in there, but you as much as anybody are high on some of the young guys, the guys that they've kept in that system over the years, and then
Fred Warner talked up D. Winters. I really love Jalen Graham. I think both those guys are going to give Devondre Campbell a run. And I'll tell you, the free safety thing's really interesting because they're so deep at corner that is it possible that they go with Renardo Green at free safety?
I mean, not as a starter, but in a pinch. And then you're thinking to yourself, is that something? Do you want to limit his abilities? Or do you want to limit his time at corner, which is unquestionably his best position? I mean, he has the ability to start today and be damn good, at least from what I saw. And again,
I agree.
It's OTAs. There's no pads, but like he didn't lack for physicality. I mean, the only knock on this guy is that he gets a little handsy. I seem to remember a guy who wore 25 who had the same knock and was pretty damn good for the 49ers too. And by the way, they want to go back to this cover 3. They want to recreate the Legion of Boom Seahawks. They feel like that's the foundation, that's their identity. I mean, Renardo Green is such a perfect fit for that. And I knew that coming in, it was really encouraging. I mean, he took it to a whole other level in just rookie mini camp, OTAs and mini camp. One other spot that wide receiver, I think there's a lot of snaps that are up for grabs there. But another spot that's really interesting for me is like, maybe it's even specific. What are they going to do with Yetur Gross-Matos? Because you see him.
I think he's going to start at defensive end opposite Bosa on first and second down.
I'm fascinated to see how they use him because I also think that he could slide in and maybe you take Collins off the field on third down and you go with Gross-Matos in the middle. He might be a 3-down player for this team. I need to see it in training. I need to see it with pads. We don't know squat, but I'll tell you this. There aren't a lot of dudes out there on a football field that look like him. Now, there's not a lot of dudes on a baseball field that look like Jorge Soler, and look where that's got the Giants. You can only go so far, the Fabio mindset. But like this dude looks like he was built by the gods to play defensive line and slide inside and outside. I mean, he is a specimen. And obviously he's on the 49ers because it didn't totally work out in Carolina. So I'm not coming to tell you he's the next coming of anything. But I really want to see what he does when dudes can punch him in the mouth a couple of times and see how he responds to that. Because against air and shorts, he looks good.
Yeah, no question. All right, last topic before we jet.
Yep.
And I'm going to share the screen here.
Nice.
To welcome in our good friend, the great John Middlecoff. From
Legend.
The Volume. And I don't know if you've seen this little soundbite from Middlecoff, but
presume I haven't, Larry, because
here
I don't
we
see
go.
Squat anymore.
Here's Middlecoff talking about the decision and the debate over whether to pay Aiyuk $30 million. Here it is.
When you can average 5 or 6 catches a game and be a total mismatch in the open field, like what's the difference of Christian McCaffrey and a wide receiver? And the reality is the only difference is he's cheaper even with a big raise because he's going to make $19 million for the next several years. Well, Brandon Aiyuk is currently begging essentially for $30 million a year. I like Brandon Aiyuk a lot. He is a winning football player. He's a really good player. But on the 49ers, he'll probably never have more than 80 catches a year. So are you going to pay $30 million a year for a guy whose production, while good, is never going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown, who I think over the last couple of years has averaged over 110 catches a year? Does it make sense to break the bank when I'm never going to play like that as an offense if I'm Kyle Shanahan.
What do you think?
I do think it's a little bit of apples and oranges when we talk about Amon-Ra St. Brown versus Brandon Aiyuk, because Amon-Ra St. Brown is used in the slot a lot, and he is a Z receiver in tight splits. There's no question that Middlecoff is legit, and it's a very fair point. I'm not getting after John a lot. I will get him after the goatee, but that's a different conversation for a different day. 2 rules in life: never trust anyone with a neck tattoo or a goatee. So good luck with that, John. Regardless, Amon-Ra St. Brown's moved around the formation a lot more. He is much closer to a Deebo Samuel, obviously without the open field ability. He's a much slighter guy, but he's used a lot more like a Deebo Samuel than he is a Brandon Aiyuk. Brandon Aiyuk is a classic X receiver. And in Kyle Shanahan's offense, that should funnel you the football a lot. And I think when the 49ers are looking at what they want to pay Brandon Aiyuk, which is always going to be less than what Brandon Aiyuk wants to be paid, they also have to extrapolate, okay, we're not going to have Deebo forever. And Deebo is a one of one. And we're probably not going to have Deebo after this year. Okay, Ricky Pearsall comes in, and everyone's really high on Ricky Pearsall. But he's not going to be Deebo. Deebo was an offensive player of the year. Deebo was the offense for 2 whole seasons at one point. It was get the ball in Deebo's hands, and the rest is our offense. That's not something that Brock Purdy needs. I don't think it's something that Kyle Shanahan ever really wanted in terms of what his offense was conceptually. It was just necessary given the talent that they had on those teams to win football games. And it was spectacular to watch. But Ricky Pearsall is going to come in and he's going to provide a little bit of a different element. And I think it's going to be really positive. But I think they're going to lean more on the X receiver, much like Kyle Shanahan has leaned on Andre Johnson, Julio Jones. And these are big Hall of Fame names. Don't get me wrong. And it's ridiculous to maybe put Aiyuk in their camp. But even like an Andrew Hawkins, who had over 100 catches when he was an X receiver at 5'2" for the Browns that one year with Johnny Manziel as the quarterback. Like Kyle Shanahan's offense, when actually boiled down to its essence, wants to funnel the ball to the X receiver. And we saw a lot of that happen last year, I would argue, with Brock Purdy in his first full year with the 49ers. I think it's going to continue to be that case moving forward, which is why the 49ers haven't walked away from these Brandon Aiyuk contract negotiations, because they could very easily do that. Say, play on the 5th year. We'll see where we're at. Maybe we'll franchise tag you. Maybe not. Maybe we'll trade your ass, because there's 5 new great wide receivers in every round of the draft. I mean, it's so easy to get a wide receiver. You just roll on down to the corner store come the end of April, and there's a ton of great new wide receivers. They haven't done that, even though they're going to be up against the cap, because they know that having a true X that they can trust day in, day out, like a Brandon Aiyuk, who's going to do the little things required to execute a Kyle Shanahan offense at a high level, you can't just draft those guys. Those guys take time to develop, like Aiyuk did. And so I think they'll give it to him. But listen, John's point is fair, but it's a little bit of apples and oranges, because, again, it's the X receiver versus a guy who moves around the formation. And I think the X receiver is going to have more and more and more of a role. And it's not because they're paying him a lot. It's because the other guys around him, a Christian McCaffrey, even though he's now signed longer, but who knows how many more miles are left on those tires, a Deebo Samuel, who we all presume this is his final year here. The offense is going to change a little bit. I think it will be more and more of the ideal Kyle Shanahan offense in the future, because that's the offense Brock Purdy can run. And that means more and more of the X receiver. And the 49ers, just as much as Aiyuk, know that, hey, that's going to be a pretty important spot. We better pay that guy and have him locked down long-term.
It's just so interesting to see how the Niners view the value here. I mean, the Chiefs kissed off Tyreek Hill because they had Patrick Mahomes, and they're like, you know what, we're going to keep Mahomes and we're not going to keep Hill. And I guess they've been vindicated because they've won the last two Super Bowls. But I mean, I'd love to know. I'd love to know, does Kyle Shanahan think that Brock Purdy's really, really special and he can make average receivers good? Or is he a believer that, these weapons are making Brock special? Because, I mean, we did see Brock in the playoffs connect with Chris Conley
Yeah.
They just added Pearsall. They just added Cowing.
Mhm.
He's thrown it a lot in big situations to Juwan Jennings.
That's right.
And you got other guys here. You got Tay Martin. You got Trent Taylor. You got Danny Gray, who's people are telling me he's having a good offseason. There's Ronnie Bell. There's Juwan Jennings. There's Debo. There's Pearsall. There's Cowing. There's just so many receivers on this team. I guess my question would be this. If it came right down to it, now Albert Breer says they're going to get it done, that the AAV is going to be about $29 million.
Mm-hmm.
So Mike Silver says that the Niners offer right now is right around $26 million. I don't know that that's true, but let's just say that is true.
Okay.
Let's say the Niners are offering $26 million. And let's say Aiyuk is just absolutely steadfast and his agent's absolutely steadfast. We need to get to 30.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like the Niners are a team that value their guys and more than other teams, where other teams are like, you know what?
They love paying dudes.
Tyreek Hill, beat it. We got Mahomes. We'll figure it out. And so they chased away Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill's a better receiver.
There's a culture element there too, though, Larry. And Brandon Aiyuk has been nothing but a good soldier, whereas Tyreek Hill's out here pushing plus size Instagram models as part of his football camp. I mean,
okay, maybe
there's a certain level. Clearly, the Chiefs have replaced headaches with headaches, but they're still part of that.
This is a team that had Kareem Hunt as well, but they, maybe there's an off-field element to this thing. But let's just say that Aiyuk says there'll be no compromise. Mm-hmm. You're either going to pay me $30 million. And the Niners said, you know what, Brandon, there'll be no compromise on our end. We've offered 26. And if you don't want to play for 26, you can play for 14 and we'll revisit this next year.
Yeah.
What do you do? You're John Lynch. You got teams left and right calling you with trade offers. Mm-hmm. And I really believe there would be several out there because I think Aiyuk's that good. And you either have to pay him 30 or you can let him play on the 5th-year option and take the chance that he doesn't become a negative influence in the locker room and kind of ruin your whole thing from within.
Right.
How are you playing your hand of cards if you're Lynch? You paying him the 30 or are you inflicting the 14.1 on him or are you trading him?
I have no problem if the 49ers want to walk away and make him play on the 5th-year option because they have the recourse of franchise tagging him twice. And over the course of the next year, as I alluded to like an hour ago, a lot of stuff can change. And the overall outlook for this team could feel very different. If they go out and just suck and lose 9 games this year, which is pretty ridiculous when you think about it today, but is by no means out of the realm of possibility in the modern NFL, that is going to irrevocably change the overall outlook for this team. And at that point, you're going to be thinking to yourself, well, let's go take a look at what Mr. $30 million wanted to do when we paid him half. And let's see if we, want to even consider that. Maybe Brandon Aiyuk does well for himself there. Maybe he doesn't. I would be more interested in what Debo Samuel does this upcoming season as it pertains to Brandon Aiyuk, because you are having to give up Debo Samuel to sign Brandon Aiyuk. I know it's not a true 1-for-1, but if you give Brandon Aiyuk this kind of money, Debo Samuel has to go. You can't afford to do that and pay Brock Purdy. So if Debo Samuel comes out and looks incredible and is just the dude and can find a way to separate from tight man-to-man coverage, and Brandon Aiyuk's out here and pouting and, not taking plays off and stuff, if someone wants to give up a first-round pick for Brandon Aiyuk, in that scenario, we get to the end of the season, I say take it. Take it, because he did not confirm that he's a $30 million a year player in this scenario, and you still have a wide receiver 1 that you can trust in Debo Samuel. And you can move Pearsall to X, which he's been practicing and looks really good at, even though he should probably be an F or an X or a Z in the future. You bring in the young guy, you give him the year to develop, and Debo's contract sort of just goes away at the end of 2025. You get out of it real easy, as opposed to sort of the painful way you'll have to exit after 2024. So Brandon Aiyuk could absolutely bet on himself, press the issue, because if the 49ers franchise tag him twice after $14 million, it's $70 million guaranteed. It's 14, then it's 25 for the franchise tag, and then it's 120% on the second tag. That's $70 million in fully guaranteed money if he wants to bet on himself year in and year out, go full Kirk Cousins, and the 49ers don't give him the 5-year deal or the 6-year deal that he's looking for with serious guaranteed money. And I could totally understand the 49ers not wanting to do that, given the inflation that wide receivers are getting right now, and the fact that you can make an argument, as Middlecoff did, and I think it's a fair one, even if it is a bit apples to oranges, that like this guy is not on the same level as some of the dudes who just got the money that they got. Or even beyond that no wide receiver, in the same way the Chiefs thought this with Tyreek Hill, no wide receiver is worth $30 million when we have a quarterback of this caliber. The Niners can look at this a million different ways. Ultimately, I think that both of them know deep down that they should get it done. That like, yes, there's both of them have millions of reasons to walk away. But it would be a little bit more contentious by now if they didn't both feel deep down they needed to get it done. And I do think it's going to drag out and it's going to be unnecessary and it's probably going to affect the start of the regular season and all that. But I think they get it done because there is value in this cost certainty for both parties. NFL's a brutal game. Brandon Aiyuk's next snap might be his last. For the 49ers, man, like just knowing what Brandon Aiyuk costs, knowing what your number one receiver costs going into the next 5 years is incredibly valuable information when you're considering paying Brock Purdy double that per year. Like you got like 40% of your salary cap gone. It'd be nice to know what percentage that is to the exact number when you're offering Brock Purdy new deals. I think that both parties need to get it done, but ultimately they both have the leverage to walk away from this thing. And that's where the true power in all negotiations lie. Who can walk away and feel better about it? And I think both parties could. So I think it's going to drag out for a while. As Butthead notes, could you trade Aiyuk for a decent OT to improve the offensive line? A lot of people have thrown out like trade for Tristan Wirfs. Why would Tampa Bay need another wide receiver? That's the thing that they're good at.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to. I mean, if I think first of all, if the Niners wanted to trade Brandon Aiyuk, somebody said Green Bay. They're not sending him to Green Bay. I mean,
no, they'll send him to the AFC.
They'll send him to the AFC. But if you look at the AFC, I could make a strong argument that the Jets could want him, the Pats could want him, the Bills could want him, the Ravens could want him, the Bengals could want him, the Browns could want him, the Steelers could want him, the Colts could want him, the Titans could want him, the Raiders could want him, the Chargers should want him, Kansas City absolutely should. I mean, there are a bunch of teams in the AFC
easy,
that could easily come knocking. I like Aiyuk. I think he's a good player, but I think the Niners get too wed to their big name guys, and if they can't make it work, I would not force him to play on the 5th-year option, and I would not give in to him. I would make the best trade I could make and get down the road.
And you're talking before
got a lot of
this
receivers. Season. Yeah, absolutely.
That's a big hit for their Super Bowl chances, though. I mean, that's the killer.
Depending on what you get. What if you could trade him to the Raiders for Devontae Adams?
I mean, I'm not even.
He's younger than Devontae.
Yeah.
Devontae,
now that's there, all you're getting is what, 1 or 2 years of Devontae Adams, who, let's be honest, there's a reason that the Raiders are looking for a Brandon Aiyuk. It's because Devontae Adams hasn't been very good.
Yeah. Maybe you could get Michael Mayer in addition.
I'm down with that. I'm down with that. But now, now we're talking about stuff that kind of fully changes the outlook of not just the 25 and beyond Niners. We're talking about something that irrevocably changes a team 37 days. If they were to do that trade today, it might even still be too close for comfort to the regular season, much less in training camp or in the regular season before, anything is started. This team, listen, they could have very easily, given everything that I've heard, gotten off of Deebo Samuel for this upcoming season. It would have probably been easier. They wouldn't have to take the same haircut that they'll take next year. They would have had a nice, solid package. They could have moved on. Here's your future. We're going with Pearsall in this spot. But they didn't do that because they want to win the Super Bowl, and trading Deebo Samuel, even if you love Ricky Pearsall, is going to make your team shittier. You are not as good of a team if you don't have Deebo Samuel on your team. So they're rolling with it, and it's going to be a little uncomfortable for everybody. But ultimately, the goal is very clear. We need to win the Super Bowl this year. They wanted to do that with Eric Armstead. Eric Armstead said, no, they had to make a tough choice, and they're a little bit worse for it, even though I wouldn't have given Eric Armstead any more money than he was already entitled to. Like,
I mean, they forced him out. I mean, they offered him
Totally.
so little money that they were just like begging him to leave, and he
get
knew it.
I get
he
it.
read
And
the
good,
leaves.
and good luck to Jacksonville with that. But like,
Yeah.
they are a worse team unquestionably because of that. Even if I like Collins, and listen, there's a lot of, it's still an outstanding team, but this team would be better if it had Eric Armstead still on it. I'm not going to make that the thesis of the season or anything, but like, if you lose Deebo Samuel, you're an appreciably worse team. We saw what happened when he kind of wasn't around for the Super Bowl, and we saw what happened when he wasn't around for 3 games in the middle of the regular season. They lost all of them. Now, those are extreme examples.
The team that I wonder if they could become calling in August is the Chargers, because Jim wants to win there now. And they got rid of Mike Williams, and they got rid of Keenan Allen, and they don't really. I mean,
Ladd McConkey and Josh Palmer aren't going to be Keenan Allen all of a sudden.
Yeah, I mean, what if the Chargers called and said, "We'll give you Ladd McConkey, Brendan Rice, and a 2nd-round pick
for Brandon Aiyuk"?
For Brandon Aiyuk, would you do that?
Yes.
McConkey's small. And he's, I don't know how much you believe in McConkey. A lot of people think that Rice's kid's just a guy. I don't know.
I'm not big on Rice. I'd ask for somebody else. I'd ask for Kamani Vidal out of Troy, who they drafted. But
running back.
I'd ask for, I don't know, anybody else. I'm not a big Rice guy. But and by the way, it's just not worth the trouble in San Francisco to have Jerry Rice's kid. I wish nothing but the best for him. But Larry, as you and I both know, local TV would not let it die, and I can't do it anymore, and it hasn't even started yet. I think I would. Now, the Niners, there was a lot of smoke around Ladd McConkey going into the draft with the 49ers, and ultimately they went with Pearsall, and I don't know if it was a false flag operation or whatnot, but if they feel comfortable with Pearsall at the X, which I kind of think they might, given how good he looked in, again, mini camp and OTAs, we're going to get a lot of it in training camp because I don't think Aiyuk's showing up anytime soon. So we're going to see a lot of Pearsall at the X. And if he looks as good as he did without pads, in pads, then hell yeah, bring in Ladd McConkey. You have Juwan Jennings. You can throw him at X. You can mix some stuff up. But Ladd McConkey as a flanker, Ladd McConkey is your Z. He's a really, really good receiver. I mean, the dude got numbers in the SEC, was one of the best receivers in college football year in and year out. He practiced week in and week out against the Georgia defense and was giving them work. I mean, it's like legendary how much work he was giving the Georgia defense, which just turned into the Philadelphia Eagles defense in the course of a couple of years. Like every single one of those guys is a pro. He's going to be really good, but is it going to be as good as Brandon Aiyuk? I don't know, but it would, listen, moving off of Aiyuk, if you feel like you can go cheap at receiver, there's a lot of really interesting possibilities. You don't have to make the same sacrifices that they're making on the offensive line, and you won't have to make the sacrifices that they're going to have to make on defense. So this era of austerity that I keep talking about, once they pay Aiyuk and once they pay Brock Purdy, because poof, there goes 40% of your salary cap. If you don't pay Aiyuk, now it's not as severe at all. I mean, you're keeping a very large chunk that you can mix and match with some, I don't know, it's probably incorrect to call someone making $10 million a middle-class player, given how much money that is. But relative to the market, it's kind of middle-class. You can spread that around a little bit. Now you got a little bit of a old-school Tom Brady Patriots thing going, and I think that worked out for them. So maybe I would try to replicate it.
It's so funny. Everybody always talks about Pearsall and they compare him to Julian Edelman. I just watched The Football Life on Julian Edelman, and Julian Edelman was just so incredibly tough that all I'll say about Pearsall is if he's Julian Edelman, that means he's an incredibly tough guy.
Pick of the century, because that dude's athletic as shit.
Yeah, we'll see.
And if he has Julian Edelman's toughness, that's a guy who gives you 110 catches a year That's White Depot. That's what you're telling me there.
Yeah, totally. By the way, I did read this today that Brock Purdy's cap number this year for the 49ers is $1 million.
Yeah.
Trey Lance's cap number for the 49ers, $5.5
That's
million.
I love doing that. I mean, Brock Purdy,
Wow.
when I say I am constantly referencing in columns or on the radio that Brock Purdy makes a rounding error, and I'm not even half kidding. I mean, the 49ers could launder $1 million very easily, given how ridiculous some of these NFL contracts are. And that's all they're paying Brock Purdy, which is why poor Brock Purdy has to do so many goddamn commercials. I mean, this dude is working harder in the summer than he is in the regular season, trying to get all these spots out so that he can actually make some cash and live in the South Bay, man. It's ridiculous.
Couple stars before we get out of here. D says, Krug, can you do more locker room interviews specifically with the D line? Absolutely. But we won't be doing any of them until after training camp. They don't open the locker room until after training camp, but we'll do lots and lots of locker room interviews this year. Third string all pro. What has Justin Herbert done to show you he's better than Purdy?
I never said that he'd done anything. Mr.
Purdy's
Hypothetical over here.
Yeah, I think Purdy's better than Herbert. Herbert's obviously the prototype physically, but Herbert's had good players around him. He's sub 500. I mean, eventually you got to play the position at a pretty high level. He's a good prospect, but there's more development there, though I do think they'll win a lot more with Harbaugh. 916_49 says brisket chili. That's right. It's really, really good. Check it out.
That's a great choice.
MF says, Larry, will the Giants hire Ned Colletti as a consultant to pull off a Manny Ramirez trade? They should, but probably won't. Blood Moon says, Larry, the biggest question, though, are any of them football guys? As Trent Baalke would say, are you a football guy?
Larry, how happy are you that they didn't draft anybody who'd already torn their ACL?
God,
just bringing in an injured player. Incredible.
I mean, it's one thing to say, hey, you know what? We're getting a great player with value. Like the Niners drafted Kevin Fagan. He had some injuries and they got him right and he got healthy and he became great. And it was a major player for them. But when Trent Baalke drafted Marcus Lattimore, and I saw the Lattimore injury, and his knee got just detonated on. It just
we all saw the injury.
Exploded. It was like PCL, MCL, kneecap, everything, every possible knee injury you could possibly have.
That's right. They found new ligaments to tear.
And he drafted him in the 4th round. Like, dude, the guy would be like drafting Trent Green after he got hit by Robert Geathers. Do you remember that hit where he looked like Trent Green got hit by a bus and bounced off the turf? You know, come on. I mean, so Trent Baalke, he's a survivor.
Just gave a whole lot of money though to Eric Armstead, who just has a litany of injuries. So good job.
Yeah, and just paid Trevor Lawrence. Like the truly great player that we expect him to be, Lowry.
Can we be very clear about something? Trevor Lawrence kind of sucked last year. Like
Trevor Lawrence is from Central Casting.
Totally.
He's supposed to be. He plays the quarter the same way Mike Singletary would play the head coach in any football movie, and it's totally believable. Trevor Lawrence would play the quarterback in any football movie.
That's right.
He is Central Casting, but
he's been a 5-star his whole life, and he never lost. And then he gets to the NFL, and someone starts hitting him.
I just don't think he's great.
Him and Herbert are really fascinating, like just juxtaposing them. And obviously, they had that playoff game where Lawrence got one over on Herbert, but which is why Brandon Staley's hanging out with us now. But two guys who have the skill set. But if it was just as simple as having it all, well, Jamarcus Russell and Trey Lance and those two guys would have won Super Bowls by now, and neither of them have come even close to sniffing it. And I think Jacksonville's going to be a disaster this upcoming season.
Better between Lawrence and Herbert?
I think Herbert's better. I've seen Herbert make a lot more plays, but situational football's tough. We're gonna know by about Halloween who's the better quarterback, because if Herbert doesn't make the jump here, now getting an elite head coach and a unquestioned culture and They needed to shift up that roster in a big way. I mean, Harbaugh got left a pretty crappy hand. Luckily, that's what the money's for. But you imagine that he will get his program in there ASAP, and if nothing else, they'll be tougher and stronger and faster. Not that that was a very high bar to get over from last season, and meaner. And they'll be a better football team, even if they're not the most talented football team. And we'll find out if Herbert's any good or not based on it, because they're not going to ask him to go out there and go full Madden mode or be the next coming of Mahomes. They're going to ask him to go out there and play situational football week in and week out, which is not something that he's ever really been asked to do because he has all this talent. Well, situational football is still how you win and lose games in the NFL. It's the talent that, keeps it going year after year after year. And I'm really, really interested to see the first 6-7 weeks of Justin Herbert actually having to play quarterback for the first time, as opposed to tossing the pigskin around with his buddies in powder blue.
It is interesting because it's like you had Keenan Allen, you had Mike Williams, and you traded those guys in the offseason.
They replaced them. To clear house with the old dudes. The old dudes were so slow.
I know, but what do they got now? I mean, they got
Ladd McConkey for 155,
and Brendan Rice, and
I'm not a Josh Palmer guy. There are some
either.
people who are big on Josh Palmer. We're going to find out.
Okay,
and listen, again, every year, every draft, there's another 5 wide receivers on top of the 30 or 40 from the year before. I mean, there are so many good wide receivers coming out of college today. It's the only thing that the college game seems to be able to do right is create wide receivers.
Lots of
and so there's going to be 7, 10, 15 guys that you and I know, but even we weren't given a lot of consideration to, that are just kicking ass in training camp and knocking off old dudes from the depth chart. And maybe the Chargers have 1 or 2 of those. If there's one guy who you should trust to get something out of everybody, it's Jim Harbaugh. I cannot imagine that Jim Harbaugh stopped being a good football coach at the NFL level just because he went and kicked ass at the college level for a while.
Look what he had though with Kaepernick. He had Bolden and Crabtree and Vernon and Delaney and Gore, and it's like a really good offensive line, a great defense. Now,
it took a while for them to build that up. I mean, I know it was instantaneous success, but like they were making chicken salad out of chicken shit there for a while. It was a damn good chicken salad. And then, they found these guys, and some of those guys who were unheralded became big names, and the program will do what the program does. The joy of that program is that it typically involves immediate success, that immediately it cuts out the chaff and you have high quality football, maybe not as talented, but you have high quality football from day one, and you build from there. That's a really good place to start. Very high floor, very high ceiling. That's what I would want in a football coach, but that's just me.
Brian Hensley. Willie Snead needs a roster spot. All right,
I don't know what they're going to do with Conley, who I see no reason to get rid of him, but
he looks good.
He's awesome, but also I guess
no room at the end.
Player coach? Do you have to put him on the roster if he's a player coach?
Yeah, seriously. That's going to do it for us. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of the Krug Show. Thanks to Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles, 205 Cypress Avenue down in Pacific Grove. Call Anthony Catania, 831-521-5264. Thanks to Underdog Fantasy as well. Use that link in the description, and you can click on that. Use the promo code Krug, K-R-U-E-G, and they'll match you up to your first $100. Dieter, what do you got cooking the rest of the week? Invader 49er says, thanks for the show. Great job. Millenniac says, thanks, fellas. We always love having Dieter in the house, but what do you got cooking the rest of the week? You got Friday, you got the weekend. Dude, any big plans?
Tomorrow, I'm locking it. So my wife is Scottish. I am pretty clearly German.
Okay.
I'm not sure if anyone figured that out based on my name being Dieter Kurtenbach.
Right.
But it's slightly Deutsch. Tomorrow, Scotland, Germany.
Could have been named after Adolf Rupp or something.
Careful there, Larry.
12
o'clock tomorrow, Fox, Scotland, and Germany in the Euros, opening it up. That's what I'm doing tomorrow. At some point, I'll work, but I know what I'm doing from about 12 to 3 o'clock, and that's locking in on some soccer, baby.
There you go. Coke Zero and some soccer, and the man's locked in for an afternoon on the couch.
Love it. I might even try to ride it on the bike, being the pragmatic man that I am, Larry, because I'm telling you right now, there's 2 kinds of offensive linemen. There's the ones that get fat and there's the ones that get skinny. I'm trying to be the latter, but I'm inherently the former. So we're working on it.
That does it for us. Have a great night, everybody. For Dieter, I'm Larry. Peace.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful.